3 weeks later, many months later.
All right. Good evening. Welcome back to the Real Precious Network. I appreciate you guys for being here. Tonight we are on a part 2 of a journey of adoptees navigating through the fog. And so I'm glad that you guys are here. If you are here, share this video. We need more people tapped into what we are doing, what we are talking about, having them join the conversation or even observing the conversation, taking in, maybe relating, maybe being able to see their stories and our stories and the stories that we share here on the Real Precious Network on the Adoptee Foster Show. It's Tuesday and we're back at it. And so how are you this evening, Mr. Leon? 3 a.m.
Good. How you doing? Happy Cinco de Mayo, Taco Tuesday, all that good stuff. Welcome in to the chat, everybody, for part 2 of the fog.
Yes. I'm doing good. It's Tuesday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. We're halfway there. You know, I always look forward to having these conversations because it gives us an opportunity to share, to advocate for those who don't have a voice in the adoptee community, as well as the foster community. It is a very underserved community, and we come here and we have this time and we dedicate our time for ourselves, because it's always a healing journey. It's all we are always, as you are currently, you know, experiencing, it is a lifelong journey in which there is not really a roadmap, because all of our stories, while they are very similar, they are also very different. And so we come here and we dedicate our time for and advocate for those who don't have their voice yet, for those who can't put words to the feelings, to those who've never really thought about it, and how adoption and foster care impacts their life, or those who have thought about it and just haven't really sat down and went through, because you can't really even sit down in one time and, you know, go through everything that we experience, that we think about. It is a journey. And so we are happy to be here on the journey with you. And we are happy that you are here on the journey with us. Okay. So again, welcome. We appreciate you for being here. Share, like, subscribe, all the things. Okay. All the things. Mr. Center of the World, the Real Precious. Hola to you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Definitely share this video. Black Couch X says peace, blessings, salute. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Hola. Oh, somebody knew me by my first name. Hold on now. Who sent you? And they spelled it right. They spelled it right. What the
one L, not 2.
Not the 2. I'm the 1, not the 2. Thank you for that. I always it puts a smile on my face when people spell my name right. It's like, that's not how you spell it. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. Tammy, I see you in the building. Hello to you as well. Hola, all that good stuff. All right. And so I do want to play the video from last week just as a refresher of the first 4 stages that we spoke about, disengaging, denying. We're going to go through those 4, and then we're going to get into the next 4, because there are 8 stages of the fog. But before we get to the second video, I am going to play a video in between, because she, in this one clip, sums it up. She doesn't go into detail. This woman, she is a late, how does she put it? We'll wait till she says it, because I don't want to say it wrong. But she found out later that she was adopted, a lot later in life. And so while these stages and phases of the fog is something that we all experience, we don't all experience it at the right time for many different reasons. And finding out that you're adopted later on in life actually kind of just places you in the fog. And now you have to figure out what's going on with your life, who been lying to you, who ain't been telling the truth, who, you got to find out a lot of things. And it makes you look at people a lot differently as well. And your relationships, analyzing your relationships a lot different. So we're going to get into the first video of the first 4 stages, and then we'll move on.
Okay, let's do it.
Fog for an adoptee.
Never fail, Salesforce. Let me get out of work. Let me get out of my work brain. Let's go.
It occurs in phases as awareness emerges and one confronts, processes, and resolves the impact of adoption in their lives. Phase 1 is called disengaging. The adoptee does not consider adoption to have a positive or negative influence on one's life, does not notice or acknowledge ways adoption may have impacted them, has little to no interest or curiosity about their race, ethnicity, culture, biology, etc. There's a big one. Lack of engagement around adoption issues keeps the adoptee from making the connection between their struggles with anxiety, depression, intimacy, etc. and their adoption. Phase number.
So disengaging is pretty much like, I'm adopted in. What's your point? Okay. It's just another part of my life. It is what it is. I'm not saying it was bad for me. I'm not saying it was good. I'm not saying that it affected anything. It just is a thing. We don't got to go there. We don't have to talk about it. That's disengaging, pretty much saying, okay. And now we go on to denying.
Number 2, denying. Adoptee knowingly or unknowingly denies any issues surrounding their adoption. May feel a fierce sense of loyalty, obligation, and or gratitude toward either adoptive or biological family. Dismisses any internal or external cues or reminders that adoption may have played a significant role in their story. Adoption may be seen by the adoptee as having only a positive influence on one's life or no impact at all.
So denying is mainly saying that your adoption has only had a positive impact on your life. And that's true for a lot of people in a way. It has not only been positive in your life, but you're not recognizing how it has also impacted your life. And it doesn't have to be in a negative way. It can be in an unknowingly way. And I think that with adoption, a lot of times we talk about the duality within adoption, and a lot of people say, well, it's either good or bad. And that's not the case at all. It's not that it's good or bad. And we always say that when you get adopted, it doesn't mean that you're going into a good family, or it doesn't mean that your life is going to be good. It means that your life is just going to be different. That's what adoption does for us. It doesn't necessarily mean that our life is going to be good. It just means that our life is going to be different than the one that it would have been if we would have stayed with our biological parents, whether that would have been good or bad. And so I don't want people to, watch our show or get the impression that we are pointing out negative things, but we are pointing out a lot of the times the things that people don't talk about, the things that people are uncomfortable uncovering or not diving into deep, on those subjects. And so denying is pretty much saying, oh, adoption It was great. My parents were awesome, and I couldn't imagine my life any other way. Doesn't mean that that's a lie. It just means that it may not be the whole truth, and you're not diving deep into the issues in your life that adoption did, kind of bleed into. And a lot of women say that they don't realize it until they have their own child. They have gone through this great childhood, had the best parents, but they don't realize how adoption affects them until they have their own child, because now they are, in some cases, this is their first biological relationship or connection since being taken away from their biological family. We're going to get into phase 3, which is defending.
Phase 3, defending. Adoptee is resistant to any suggestion that adoption may have an impact on one's life. Wants to be considered no different than people who were born biologically to their parents. Doesn't want to be pitied. They may defend their adoptive or biological family, not wanting to hurt them in any way. Also may defend being adopted as something that makes them special, chosen, and or is God's plan.
So defending is pretty much saying it's almost like denying, but it's also making yourself as if you were the same as biological children. And so it's saying my parents did a great job, and even adoptive parents play a part in that, when they say, oh, I would have loved you as if were my own, meaning my own child that I gave birth to naturally. And so sometimes adoptive parents can play into the stream of thought of, you're no different than my biological children. If they have biological children, right, you're no different than them. And so as the adoptee, you grow up thinking, I'm no different than them. They didn't show me any, they didn't show differences in love. And so in my mind, I don't have to, wonder anything else, or I don't have to recognize anything else. And it's okay to recognize those other things. That's why it's called a fog, because in the fog, you can't see. And a lot of people choose not to see those things because they don't want to upset their adoptive parents. They don't want to get into the negative feelings about adoption, and the depression and the disengagement and the detachment that you may feel being an adoptee. And so defending is really pretty much saying, I'm in this family. I'm no different than anybody else in the family. And my parents, they are doing a wonderful job, and the rest is history. We then get into discerning. This is the 4th stage. So this is the middle stage of the fog, adoptee fog.
Phase 4, discerning. Adoptee begins to have an awareness of adoption issues and starts to recognize the societal and familial forces at play that have influenced or pressured them to deny or defend, but may still see adoption as mostly positive. Adoptees start to discern the impact of adoption on their life, which is often prompted by a developmental stage or significant life event such as birth, death, marriage, etc.
All right. And discerning, I don't know, discerning for me came, and I told this last live, discerning for me came when my biological sister called me. I was in college, I was going into class, and I just got this random phone call, and it was my sister, pretty much telling me, I'm your sister. I found your name on my paperwork. I'm this old, blah, 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 blah. Between that and being in college, because being in college, then we're educated on psychological, and I was a dual major, and I was going to school for being a teacher. And so I had a lot of child study classes where I realized there were some things that I didn't go through, and there are some stages that I didn't feel connected to, that I should have been a little bit more tuned in. But because I was adopted, I wasn't tuned into those phases and stages of child development. And so that's also where the discerning came from me. It came from education, because had I not been educated on those things, I would have just not known. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think discerning for me came in when I was learning about certain things, and when my sister called me and pretty much I don't want to say, it wasn't like she
Stop
dropped.
you in your tracks.
Yeah. It was just like, wait, what? And I couldn't even go into class because it was a lot to take in. It was a lot to, I had so many questions. And this was a sister that when I was in foster care, I'm the oldest of 7, those who don't know. But when I was in foster care, they would tell me, I'm going to get you pictures. They never told me her name. It was a sister right after her. And so when I was in foster care, by that time, my other sister was born too. And they were like, you have 2 other sisters. We're going to get you pictures. We're going to, this false sense of hope for me as their sibling. But they never did. And so because they never did, I told you, 3 a.m. out of sight, out of mind for me, I don't see you if I don't talk to you. I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know you. And so that was when the discerning came in for me, because at this point, a piece of my biological family has reached out to me, yet I'm already rooted in this family that I was adopted into. And so it was this Twilight Zone, as you always like to say, right? It's this, okay, a part of it's almost like a chicken being born like out of an egg, right? It's like real slow, and an egg has so many little pieces, and her called me was that piece that was just like, I'm here, I'm coming into the world. My light kind of just opened up since then, honestly. So for you, when was the discerning? Because discerning is a pivotal point in the fog. It's like you still can't see, but you're seeing a little bit, but you still don't know where the path is going to go. You don't, you're not sure how you got there, but you got there, it happened. When was that discerning point for you?
Probably when I met my parents for the
Okay.
first time.
And how old were you?
Hmm?
How old were you when you met them?
I was in my late 20s.
Okay.
So, and I was definitely in a different mindset than I am now. I'm more mature now, and and just reading about, that book really opened my eyes to my mannerisms and the way that I was as a kid. And so really that book, because I don't know about you, but like we never talked about adoption in my family. Like
We
I
never.
was like, my mom told me, that I was adopted, and I was like, okay, what does that mean? That mean we can't go get pizza or something? Like what?
No.
Like I guess I didn't fully understand the concept of what that mean in its totality, from how that would shape the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, because they were all I knew. So when they told me that, I was like, okay, great. What does that mean? But I didn't really start to understand until I got older. Um, then I got to a point where I was ready to look for my parents. And so, um, and then still, even to this day, going through it, trying to connect. For those that don't know, I have been recently communicating with my sister, and she had been giving me some valuable information, but I had reached out to people, and they have not yet contacted me back. So I'm being hopeful that they will. I know it's a process. Like I think when I wrote my mother a letter, um, I think I wrote her a letter like on Easter, and then like she didn't call me until like Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Your
just gotta be,
biological mother. You're talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
your biological mother.
yeah.
Just for those who are watching, because sometimes when you're speaking about adoption and you say mother and father, they're like, which one?
Mhm.
I know it happens for me. They'd be like,
My
wait,
bad.
you talking about,
Yeah, and so when I was wrote my letter to my biological mother, um, when she didn't call within a couple of weeks, I was getting worried. I was like, "Is she ever going to call?" And my adopted mom was like, "Oh, just be patient. Just let it ride out for a minute. You know, she might be shocked and she might not believe it. And, you know, it's a lot for, you know, at once. And then, you know, lo and behold, uh, I can remember I was actually at my adopted mom's house. We was watching TV and then she called.
Mm.
And I was kind of shocked, to be honest.
Whoa, what movie? Or did you pause the movie? Keep
Right.
going. You just don't know what.
It's the real movie. What a popcorn at.
To...
So, you know, I just got to be patient. You know, and I'm, you know, thankful, you know, to have met you because you have given me some grateful insight. Um, you know, like I said, I never met anybody that was adopted before. So, like, this is new to me, you know, having someone that I can confide in and that they understand, like, what that process is. And, you know, it's going to be ups and downs. And we just got to roll with the flow like the ocean.
Yep. Sorry, y'all. Having light difficulties over here.
I was too. I'm actually about to put up my light because it's.
The devil is busy. That's what my mom would say. The devil is busy. All right. But yes, this journey is a journey that you have to have patience for. And you don't realize that at first, because at first it's just like, oh, new family. I want to meet you. I want to come see you. You know, I want to talk to you, because for so long we're surrounded by people that we don't have a biological bond with. And so when we do find those biological contacts, we are eager to get in contact with us. A lot of us, not everyone. I think that everyone has the thought of reunification, and whether you act on it or not, it's still a thought. And a thought, you know, can become real if you allow it and you want it to be. And even if it is not something that you want to move forward with, it will always be a thought in the back of your mind of if you should have moved forward with it. And I always say that, you know, you have some, and we're actually going to go over this next week if I can get these videos sacked right. Okay, we're going to go over some videos that I stumbled across of a woman who was adopted, but she had a child when she was 15, and she does not want to meet her biological child. There's also a woman and a man who were together at one point in time. They had a child, they put the child up for adoption, they separated, married other people, came back together, and now they want to meet their child. So it's a myriad of different things. But most adoptees want to meet and want to know where they come from. It's just a natural feeling, a natural longing to know where you come from. Whether you continue those relationships or not, that's a different story. And honestly, you know, continuing those relationships, you still have to have a mindset of, this may not be a forever thing. This may not be something that carries on. This may not be something, it may not be that fairy tale story that sometimes adoption is depicted as. You know, reunification a lot of times is not even included in the adoption story when you see them on in films. A lot of times adoption is depicted as the adoptee is the monster child. They gonna murder your the rest of your family, and you need to get rid of them. Like, a lot of adoption stories are just not shown in a good light. And so reunification is definitely not one of the things that is highlighted in our stories when they're depicted in film, because, you know, once you are adopted, that's a forever thing. And so a lot of people don't even think about the reunification or think about that process and how that process plays out in our lives and the emotions that we go through.
Yeah, because when you, I was just reading Tammy's
Yeah, I was about to
notes. I don't say that it was like when I met my parents, you know, my mother embraced me because, you know, I think most mothers have that natural instinct you know, but it didn't really grow from there, you know. Um, and they, I think they just wanted to see if I was okay, see if I made it, you know, see where I was in life, and you know, if I was, you know, in a situation where I needed help or anything like that. You know, I wasn't in a situation like that. Like I just was trying to fill the gaps in, you know, in my life, you know, in my heart really.
Mhm.
Um and you know, I'm trying to um reestablish something with my sister. But I don't know. Um you know, she was giving me some good information, and then all of a sudden, you know, I um I haven't heard from her in a few days, so I don't know what's going on. You know, and maybe it's just too much for her right now. That's possible, um, because as adoptees, you know, we're like you said, we're so excited, you know, to reach the pinnacle of, oh, I'm actually communicating like with my sibling, and I'm trying to like get all this information as I can, because you never know, you know. Because like when I met my grandmother, I met her one time,
Mhm.
and after that, just like what Tammy was saying, like met my grandmother one time, she was excited, then all of a sudden, nothing. She just like disappeared off the face of the earth. No,
Mhm.
you know, I was calling her, leaving her messages, and she was not calling back. You know, and then it just got to a point where I was like, all right, well, probably need to move on from this because it ain't going nowhere.
Right.
And so, you know, I met my aunt, and we actually went bowling, and bowling is actually something I do really well. And she was like, "Oh, you're a really good bowler."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I've been bowling since, you know, I was like in middle school."
Mhm.
And um, met her one time. Pretty much after that, nothing. And you know, I'm trying this for this is my second go round. So I'm trying. I'm hopeful, you know, that it will be something that is plentiful and something that can turn into something. But you know, I think I got a long road ahead of me.
Yeah, it's the highs and the lows that we go through. The
Hmm.
highs and the lows is something that we're not prepped for. Like you said, we don't have those conversations surrounding adoption within our adopted families, and so these are things that we experience on our own, and it's hard to bring people into that journey unless they have actually gone through it. It's also hard sometimes to bring your adopted family into the journey because I believe sometimes they can feel an awkward space. Like they don't know what they know, that they chose you to be their children. And so their place is to protect you and to provide for you and to love you. But then
Hmm.
when it comes to the biological family, it's almost like, well, what place do I hold? Where do I really stand in this? Because it's not sometimes I think adoptive parents feel as though not that they're in competition necessarily with the biological family, but they fear them in some sense because it's like, I want you to be my child, but I know you came from them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so it's like they feel as though the biological family may have an upper hand in it at some point in the process of in the journey of adoption, because at any point the adoptive parents can then turn into the adoptee, right? Because then the adoptee can choose whether they want to have a relationship with their biological family, and now the adopted family is now feeling like the adoptee of, like, you left me, you abandoned me, you're going to go see your biological family and you're leaving us in the dust. And it's like, no, we can all coexist, but there has to be a mental frame of mind that as an adoptive parent, again, it's that love me anyway, right? I'ma love you anyway. Right? It's like you gotta have that attitude of we are family because we
Mm-hmm.
are. I'm your
Yeah, at the end of the day, yeah.
family, right? And so when adoptive parents, and that's why these spaces are so important because it's all inclusive. This is an all inclusive resort over here, okay? It's not, this is outside of this package and we adopted you and so they're not relevant anymore. It's an all inclusive thing, and that's why I also say that we need to talk about adoption early and often too, because if you don't talk about it early and often, then it won't feel like an inclusive experience, and the birth family can, you can then fear them, right? You'll have this fear instead of this comfortability around bringing them up and around your children getting older and that reunification process being a possibility in all of your lives, because it not only affects the adoptee but it affects you too. I mean, that's being honest about the situation. And while adoptees experience that fog, I believe that adoptive parents also experience it as well. Tammy says, I reached out to my biological family in 98 with letters. First grandmother, she said she didn't know anything, but I knew she knew who I was. So I wrote her a letter and one to send to her daughter, the mother. She goes on to say she called a few weeks later. We met, seen her in 2011. Nothing since then. Reunion didn't go well.
Yeah, and I wanted to say about the space that the adopted parent should sit in is, I think as an adopted person, you should really go through this, you know, like at some points you need to go through that on your own. But like I was I was piggybacking, you know, thoughts and ideas off of my mom. So like after my adopted mom. So like I would ask her like, hey, do you think I should do this? Or what do you think about um, because we actually met my grandmother, my biological grandmother. We, my mom with my adopted mom went with me because
Mm,
she didn't live that far from where I grew up,
okay.
literally 2 miles, like in Michigan, in Detroit, where I grew up. My biological grandmother
Hmm.
lived, and so, and when I went to meet my biological parents, I went by myself
Gotcha.
because I felt like that was something that I needed to do by myself, to be in my own emotions, and not worry about, you know, um, like I'm not saying I wasn't worried about my mom's feelings, but I was really trying to take the next step into adulthood, into manhood, and I felt like I needed to do that by myself,
Right.
and she was okay with that. Like she didn't. She was like, "Yeah, if that's what you want to do, I'll support you. If you need me to, send you some money, for gas, or if you want me to pack you up some lunches,
Oh,
she was all for it. Mhm. Like she was all for it because she knew. I mean, she knew at some point in my life I was going to have want to do this, right? Like so, um, it's just that when your adopted parents don't sit in the right space because some adopted parents try to make it all about them, and really it's not about that. It's just trying you're just trying to find your identity, and if you're able to make connections, that's really the biggest thing, right?
right.
Because like just because you meet somebody, that doesn't mean that you are going to make that connection, because they may not want to. They might want to just meet you and say, okay, you're all right. I see what you look like. You see what I look like. Yeah,
Mm.
you look like us. We're twins. So I mean, I think when it comes down to it, there are conversations that need to be had that are vital to, really keeping you mentally there. Because, like, just because your adopted parents don't experience it with you, that doesn't mean they can't experience it mentally with you,
Right.
because um, I was always asking my adopted mom, like, hey, I'm having these conversations like with my birth parents. What do you like? You have any suggestions? I'm having conversations, or lack of conversations with my uh, parents, and what why is this? Like, why won't they give me more? Like, why?
Yeah.
I was asking her so many questions, and she was just like, you know, there are people in the world that just don't have that ability to communicate with children, and um, they don't, either they just forgot about it, or, you know, and it brings up bad, it brings up trauma from the past that they don't want to talk about. Hey, what's going on, Mo? What's going on, Chelsea? CDT Beats. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, it definitely brings up the truth. That's what it brings up. Let's just be real, right? It brings up the truth.
Mhm.
And sometimes people put children up for adoption because of the truth and reality. These circumstances it's not, I'm not fit to be able to take care of this child. And so I have to do what's best for the child. And I it it feels so good to me to hear you say, they even went with you to meet your grandmother, right? And so they were 100% supportive of this journey. And that's why, again, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face, you have to talk about adoption often and early. It's just like vegetables, right? Get them hooked on the green beans early. Get them hooked on the asparagus and all that, all carrots, and get the children hooked on it early so they won't be picky when they get older, and they'll know it's something that is good for them, and they won't struggle eating it and consuming it and looking at it as a healthy thing. It's the same thing with adoption, often and early, because that will make your child comfortable with coming to you with those feelings of wanting to connect with their biological family. It will make them comfortable with confiding in you if they get rejected by their biological family. I think that's another thing that is just not spoken about in adoption agencies when parents say that they want to adopt, because reunification is really the goal of foster care, not adoption. Reunification is the goal of foster care because I'm in foster care because when children are temporarily placed, the courts want to be able to place the children back with their biological parents, in which I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think that states have their quotas. States have a certain amount of money that is given to certain counties that allows them to fund the child protective services, and because they have x amount of children allows them to have x amount of money. And so that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But the goal the goal that they told us about foster care is that reunification is the goal for foster care. It's not the goal for adoption. And the reality is, and it's something that adoptive parents should be prepared for, the reality is a child will always be curious about where they come from if they don't stay in that biological environment. It is just a curious nature, because your nature wants to get you back around those who are the same as you, especially as you get older. Again, for women, especially when you start to have children, and for men, women have the children but men make the children, right? And so that's a natural order of things, of wanting to be with your people per se.
Mhm.
So reunification may not be the goal in adoption, because adoption is forever, but it is a strong possibility that that is what will happen. And if that is what will happen, how do we prepare adoptive parents for this stage and phase in their adoptee's life? And that is just, they're not prepared for that. They're, if they're not actively seeking out this information, or they're not actively emotionally involved in their child's life and their adoptee's life,
Mhm.
you can go through the motions and you can go through life with your adoptive parents and adoptee in that family sector without having these conversations. And so when it actually does happen, that's again where the fear comes in, the inadequacy. I'm not their biological parents. I don't even know how to even have this conversation with them, because we've been raising them all their life. It's like a story I heard the other day, where a girl has tickets for her graduation, and her stepfather has been raising her all her life, and her biological father comes back into the picture, and she wants her biological father at her graduation. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, why would she want her biological father there? Her stepfather is who raised her, and he's the one who's been providing for her. And while I understand that side of the story, I also understand the other side too, of being someone who hasn't had a biological parent in my life for so long. And it's the longing to want to get closer to the biological parent. Now, I don't know the circumstances of why he wasn't there, but do you really deny your child the relationship with their biological parent? You know, let's take off abuse and anything dangerous, or
Mhm.
bad environment out of the way, but do you really deny them that? And are you prepared to have those conversations and have those real life situations come up where it puts you in an uncomfortable position? Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for two people who signed on a dotted line to have you as their child forever, and for you to want to go see your biological family. And so all of this, all of what we're talking about, and all of what we're mentioning is a part of the fog, because you are living within one family, knowing that you have another family, whether you've met them or not. You have these feelings, you have these emotions, you have these thoughts that are, some of them sometimes lie dormant. Right? You're disengaging. What do you mean I'm adopted? I mean, I know that I'm adopted, but why does everybody have to know that I'm adopted? Why does it have to be something that's bad? Or why do I have to, talk about how it has affected me? Well, because there are aspects of your personality that do attribute to adoption. And if you don't address it, or if you don't look into it, then you'll go into that denial, that denial phase. And the denial phase will keep you stuck in the fog. It'll keep you stuck in ways that you should be growing past, or phases in growth and development that you should be getting through, but because you won't acknowledge something, you're stuck there. And a lot of people are stuck just merely because they won't talk about it. They won't even let it pass their lips. They'll have a million thoughts about it. They don't want to make their adoptive parents uncomfortable. But the truth makes people uncomfortable. And it's okay to be uncomfortable, because nothing grows in comfort. Nothing grows in comfort. If you're comfortable, you're probably not growing. You're stagnant. You're not really, growing in your personal development. But it's when you're able to become uncomfortable is when you're able to, include that and allow that truth to not be a bad part of your story, but just to be a part of your story and a part of the journey of your adoption life, because it's a lifelong thing.
That's a question I have for you. Do you feel uncomfortable talking about adoption in front of your adopted family? Like how you feel about, like you've met your sisters and now you're going to meet your father. Um, like you're growing these connections, and do you feel uncomfortable um, talking about this around like your adopted family? Because this is my first time actually ever talking about this stuff online. Like, and like I said, when I first met you, you inspired me to talk about it, and it's very uplifting. Um, and also, I'm actually going through some of this stuff right now, so like uh, I'm just curious, like, how do you feel about voicing your truth?
I feel very comfortable in my true child. Okay. I feel very comfortable in my truth. This is why it's called the real precious, because at some point in my journey, I had to be real with myself and say, okay, Michelle, you're adopted, but you also have a biological family that you have this relationship with. Now, as far as, your question of, do I feel comfortable talking about it around my parents and with my parents? No, I don't feel uncomfortable talking about it. However, it is a very one-sided conversation. I get a lot of, oh, okay, or be safe when you go, or, I'm glad that you got to, have that time, or things of that nature. But again, we didn't talk about our biological. So I was adopted at 9. For those who don't know, I was 8 turning 9, going into the 4th grade. And so it's almost like, I always say, it's like my parents had that Men in Black pen that, like, when you flashed it, like, you just forget about everything. And that's how it was. When you got adopted, it was just like, that was your former life. This is your new life, right? And so we never, and I was in a few foster care homes before I got adopted. And so I didn't just, I wasn't a baby, or I wasn't taken from one home and put into another. I had went through a series of homes. And so, I think uh, that speaks to why I got in trouble, a lot when I was younger, suspended. I always saw my mom white Nissan Stanza coming up to that school because, it was traumatic for me to go from
Mhm.
a home that I loved to a home that I didn't even know. Like, I didn't know the people, I didn't know the surroundings. Even driving from North Jersey to South Jersey just felt like the longest trip ever. I saw the city turn into the suburb. It was just a weird experience. And so after we got adopted, there was no talking about, um, do you miss where you come from? Can we help you with that? Can we, sit with you while, you cry about that? Can we, it was just, they went into, we're your parents, you're our children, and that's just what it is, right? And now, mind you, I am 8 turning 9, and it's like you're living in a world, and it was only up until, like I said, my biological sister reached out to me, because we just went through the motions, right? We were family, we love each other, but at the same time, it was like I was living this life and had another life outside of me, and when there really is no commingling of the two. I think my one sister came down, and my parents met her. My parents met one of our brothers. This is why I know God is real. Like, it's crazy. My parents were asked to adopt one of my siblings a long time ago. They didn't tell us until we were well into our adult years. Like, oh yeah, the adoption agency called us, asked us if we wanted to adopt one of your brothers. We told them no. And so as an adult, I was like, dang, like, y'all couldn't, like, this couldn't be a family discussion. I mean, I know, y'all have the finances, you gotta know if this is right for your family, but dang, like, I felt like, why didn't y'all tell us this before? But anyways, so they said no, right? So that brother got adopted by a white family.
Mhm.
Dad was a preacher. They lived on a farm. There were a lot of adoptive kids in that family. They also had biological kids as well. This was a white family, right? Years go by. The brother that I got adopted with goes into the army, right? He graduates from the army, and at the same base that we were at, our biological brother, the same brother that the adoption agency asked my parents to adopt, he was there at the same exact time that we were there. Like, you
What?
can't tell me that that's real, right? And so my parents got to meet him right then and there, right? It was just like two biological brothers in the same place at the same time, serving our country, and my parents got to meet him at that time. We had met him one time prior, my brother and I. My brother, found him on Instagram or Facebook or something, reached out, he came here, and we celebrated Christmas with him one year. And so that's as much of commingling of my biological family with my adoptive family. When my mom passed away, we were back and forth to North Jersey to plan her funeral and things of that nature. And there wasn't much, comforting or, come to us if you're having any issues with this. It was just kind of like we had to go through it alone. I share with my mom that I met my biological father, but I didn't share with my father. Like, I didn't personally tell him myself. I'm sure my mom shared it with him. And so am I comfortable talking about it? Yes. I will be more comfortable talking about it if my adoptive family would be inclusive of my biological story as they are as my, with my adopted story. That would make me feel a little bit more comfortable, because it's like, I don't feel like, and it's not necessarily that I'm hiding anything from them, but it's like, they don't share in that excitement with us. And so I don't really get excited to share it, when, it happens. But that would make me even more comfortable, that, because I always personally felt like that side of myself, that part of myself, my parents never really wanted to go down that lane. And in my mind, I'm like, but that's part of me. Like, that's part of who I am. And if you can accept that part of me, then you really can accept who I am fully. And that's what's always made me feel uncomfortable, because it's like, you want to accept the part of me that, you have a hand in raising and, bringing this young girl into a woman. But part of what made me and what, makes me who I am is that biological piece of me as well. Especially, I'm the oldest of seven. So like I told you a couple of lives ago, like, that's a lot of pressure sometimes, because our biological mother is gone. And I'm not saying that my brothers and sisters look at me as mom, but they look at me as the next thing, like, and so I don't know. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but the only uncomfortable part is them not accepting that part of me. And if they do, it's not a vocal. It's not, it's not something that they communicate with me. It's not something that they communicate with either one of me or my brother. And so that part is kind of bittersweet, because without all of that, I wouldn't be, in this situation. I wouldn't be an adopted child. And so that is what I wish was a little bit more accepted. Like, none of my adopted family knows any of my biological family. Like, your parents going with you to see your grandmother, like, to me, that's huge, because it's like they're making a statement of, I accept all of you, and I accept this part of you, even if it makes me feel uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. It's like, they have these feelings of, okay, what is she going to be like? They have the same feelings that you have, but it's two different playing fields, right? They're there to support you. You're there to actually get facts and belonging and attachment, and not something that you hold on necessarily forever, but something that you get to experience that a lot of people don't. I have two siblings that have never met our biological mom, and never will, because she has passed on. And so, you know, certain things you just got to be grateful for, because other people don't get that experience, and you wish that your lives could have like, it could collide a little bit. I wish that my lives, could collide a little bit more, because we're married, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if we family anyway, and we're in this loving family, and I have siblings, to me, that should be accepted. They my siblings. You didn't adopt them, but at the same time, we what we going? We can't get rid of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're not going nowhere. So, you know, that's
We got some questions up in the chat for you. Some tough ones.
oh God, oh God, oh God. Let's see. I'm gonna start here. Chelsea says, "Oh, that's a good way to explain it, Precious. It's like you had a double life without knowing the other sides." Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All adoptees have, especially those who meet their biological family, they now have like this double life. Yes, it definitely was God. It was not a coincidence because, again, what person could orchestrate that both of my biological brothers would be in the same place at one time? And this is the biological brother that they were asked to adopt.
Wow.
So now they get to see him in the flesh, look him in the eyes, and he don't know, you know, he doesn't know that, but they know that. Are you saying that your adoptive parents weren't comforting when your bio mom passed? No, I mean, it was, you know, it was a very, very corporate. I'll say that. You know how in corporate, you know, it's like, oh, I'm sorry for your loss and things of that nature. But it wasn't I don't know. I guess it just wasn't what I expected. It wasn't a continual, it was like she passed the day on, you know, we went to the funeral, you know, day of the funeral. Okay, our prayers are with you. And then other than that, like that was it. Like next day comes and we moving on with life, you know. Precious, do you feel like there's a jealousy there with your adoptive parents? I don't think it's a jealousy per se. I think I honestly think, because I mean, let's be real. My mom was a drug addict. So I don't think that there's anything to feel jealous about, you know? I think that it's more of a you're leaving me, or you're, you know, you're being. Now, I left a part out. When we went to go see our biological mother and we went to go reunite with her, we did receive a nasty text message. And it was like, you're being disrespectful. This is another reason why I feel these things, and why I feel like there is no connection in the colliding or the commingling of the worlds. Because when we did go, you know, we got a message, you're ungrateful, disrespectful. How could you do this? Why would you do this?
From your parents?
Yeah. Yeah. And so
wow,
even that was, I remember I was at the table. We were at a restaurant eating, and I was at the table, and I was like, I'm about to go off. And my brother was like, nah, just be cool, right? Because in my mind, it's are we not supposed to feel curious? Like, are we not supposed to feel the feelings that we're feeling, right? Are we not supposed to? And we were adults at this time. It's not like we were like 11 and 12 and we snuck out in the middle of the night and went to a restaurant to go eat. Like I was like probably 19, 20, maybe 21. Like I was around that age. So it wasn't like, you know, I don't know. We were already out of the house in college, and like towards the end of college, doing like it wasn't like we were doing it to, I don't know. It wasn't like we were doing it out of anger or anything. It was literally out of curiosity. Like, okay, we want to know what she looks like. We haven't seen her since we were 1 and 2 years old. We're curious. We want to know. Yet, like, we want to know. And I don't know. I think that there was no jealousy there. There was really anger, if I can be honest. Like it seemed like it was anger at first, especially from that text message. And I don't know. I just wish that, you know, I I don't want to say anything bad about my adoptive parents because they're great people. But I just wish that some things were a little bit different. There was a little bit more understanding and compassion towards that part of us, because we didn't choose this. Like this is, it's not like we chose to put ourselves in the foster care system to be adopted. And
Right.
so how can we be, how can you be mad at us for wanting to know the other side, especially because, again, we weren't babies when we were adopted. We knew, like, we knew these people, like, you know what I mean? Like, and not to say that we knew them relationally, but we're from them. And so, you know your crazy cousin. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know how they go, like, so
Mm.
because in you. It's in your blood, And so it was just reconnecting to what we knew when we were children, trying to just bring it back together as adults. Like, you know what I mean? And again, with that primal wound, there is a trauma that children go through, and on top of being drug addicted children, it you have that primal wound of being separated. And so it's not like we wanted to come back together again to be a family, but we wanted to know who our family was. And it just wasn't, it just didn't feel like that was a welcoming thing to do.
Yeah, and maybe, I don't know, but like maybe they always had a wall up that they would never actually be that vulnerable where they could actually support you in that way, because that takes a lot of understanding. um like when my adopted mom, you know she was great. Like she was just a light to my life. Like, um it was nurturing that I needed, you know at every step of my life, right? Like, not just when I turned 18, right? Like, so I'm 20 something, and I'm, asking her like, hey, like, what should I do? Or, like, what would you do? Or if you were in this situation, I was just running so many thoughts,
It's a
to
process.
her. Yeah. Like, and I was just asking her, like, hey, I'm trying to come at this from a responsible, mature person, but I'm also, this is driving me. This is, I think the older you get, the more it drives you to actually want to meet like your family.
Yeah.
I think at a young age, yeah, you might, like, I think like when I started turning maybe 15 or 16, I was like, man, I wonder, you know, I would love to meet my parents, if I had siblings, cousins, and um but you know, I wasn't I wasn't, nowhere near ready for that, Um and when you're ready, right? Like, so it's just it's a driving force inside of you. Like, it's like Inspector Gadget times 800.
Yeah. It don't necessarily even mean you're ready. It
Mhm.
that natural feeling of once you
Mhm.
know that you're adopted, because a lot of people don't know, when they should know, and they know a lot later. I'm gonna get into a video like that. But just because, you have that urge to want to look for them, that's why they I believe in a lot of states you can't really even look until you're 18. You can't
Mhm.
go looking until you're 18. But for me, it literally came looking for me. My sister was looking for us. And so that's the thing. Like, we didn't even go looking. I mean, I did little things like change my last name on Facebook to my biological last name. And that wasn't even my idea. Somebody gave me that idea. They was like, well, why don't you? And I was like, that's actually a good idea. And when I did, someone reached out to me. So it wasn't like, we were hardcore looking, but
I should
just,
do that.
yeah. But just because, you have that urge to look doesn't necessarily mean you're ready, because there's so many, especially when it comes to rejection.
Mhm.
When it comes to rejection from your biological family, that's something that you're not ready for, because in your mind, it's like, okay, we family, so let's meet, let's talk, let's, spend some
Yeah,
time.
why is it taking so long for you to get back to me? What's going on? Like,
Yeah, like
what's the
what's more
deal?
important than me? Like I'm just, like hello, like we blood, but again, the truth is uncomfortable for people, and there are truths that we don't know. We
Mhm.
don't know. And that's a part of the reason why we're in the situation of adoption, because there are a lot of things that we don't know that were not good for us, and adults had to make a decision for us. So, I think that I, y- I can see why they want you to be 18, because you have gone through your younger adolescent teenage years under the protection and the covering of your adopted family, that when you turn 18, that's you're considered an adult and you start living your life. So
Yeah, I don't see how your situation is different, right? Because they actually reached out to you. And so that's different. But like on a, let's just say 1 out of 10 adopted people, like I don't see how you could actually be ready before you 25, to be honest. You haven't lived any life. Like you haven't understood how the world works. You have to work and lose a few jobs, before you before you actually like can understand what's going on. And like that book you recommended to me, like if I would have had that when I first started looking for my adopted parents, I'd probably be in a way, uh, I would understand more. But that's what the good thing about education. You can read and understand more.
yep.
Um, and that book, look, that book should be given to every adopted parent when they get ready to adopt a kid. I ain't even gonna front. The
Okay.
primal wound. Um, and you know, you are so lucky to have your sister find you. Like, just be like, hey, I'm your sister. We've been looking for you forever. Like, what's up?
Well, she was looking for me forever. She knew that she wasn't like her adopted family. And because they didn't want to give her answers, she took it up. We all investigators, child. She took it upon herself to go look, in their personal things, and there she found, it wasn't like she her and my other sister were raised with their adopted families when they were very, very young. And so they didn't have the same experience that me and my brother had, because we're the oldest out of the bunch. After my mom kept having kids, they were taken right away. She didn't have an
Mhm.
opportunity to raise them. She one of my siblings did not get put up for adoption because her dad was in the picture. And even her dad didn't raise her for a little bit. Other people were raising her, but she was never put into the system. And that was, down, down, down the line, because there are other siblings that come from this man that he didn't raise. They got put up for adoption. So I don't know how this one, got through the through the hands of, protective services and things of that nature. I think that she had people in her community that was willing to raise her so she didn't go into the system. But again, this is one, two, three, four, five, six, the fifth child, So by that time, they had already known what my mom was going through. But, I did search for my father. So, I did do some searching, and I did searching for my biological mother too. But you're right. My sister ultimately is the one who kind of got that jump started.
Yeah, I mean, it is such a, you know, it's an emotional roller coaster. That's all I can say.
Hmm.
you know, and I know you want to get into the next video, but I thought that the conversation was really important just for people who are here and trying to understand. Like, I'm actually going through this right now. So, like, I'm not just, you know, everything's not hunky dory. You know, I'm going through the motions. I'm in the twilight zone. I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster, and having a community who understands and can help you navigate is very important, especially in your case because you were adopted, you were raised, you were loved, and now those parents are no longer here. So it kind of puts you back in a sense of an adoptee that was not placed, but you were raised and you have all that love and nurturing underneath your belt, but now they're not here anymore, right? And so it's like,
Hmm.
okay, now who do I? You had your mom to confide in, you had someone that you could ask these questions to, even though she wasn't, part of this community. She allowed herself to be available emotionally to you for those reasons. And my sister's going through the same thing. Both of her adopted parents are no longer here and she has to go on with life. Our biological mom passed away, and she has to go on with life and navigate it without any parents now at this point. So,
And Mother's Day is coming up.
and
Great.
Mother's Day is coming up, right? And I was going to get to that towards the end because that is a day that adoptees. It is such a whirlwind of emotions on that day. It is, and it's on the ninth, and that's the same day as
The 10th.
the 10th. The ninth is the same day as my biological mom's birthday.
Mm.
So, there's so many different emotions. It's almost like you want to be happy, but then you can't, or you find yourself being, joyous, and then you find yourself just like, leave me alone. I just want to kind of be in my own space and go through my own thoughts and just have my own time because nobody understands. And I don't want to say nobody understands because people lose their mom, whether you lose them through adoption, whether you lose them through death, whether you lose them, people go through loss. So we're
Hmm.
no different. But
Right.
what makes us different is that, those people who may have lost their mom through death, at least they got to be raised with her. At least they raised them, right? And so they
Hmm.
have memories, they have those traditions, they have those bonds. But when you're going through Mother's Day in a family that, celebrates the day that you were adopted, but don't want to acknowledge your biological mother on that day, right? Because it takes nothing to say, and, let's honor your biological mom in some type of way. And
Hmm.
in that you do have to become creative. Again, this is why child psychologists are so important and adoption specialists are so important because you should want to, again, be inclusive. This is an all inclusive resort. All right. Everything. And so if that is the case and you're seeing it like that, then things like Mother's Day and Father's Day, won't have a huge it won't have a huge impact on you because you know that you're loved in a way that you're getting that compassion from your parents in a way that you can't get it from your biological parents, but you know that your adoptive parents are covering you in so many ways that they're not allowing you to, go through it alone. And
Hmm.
that's the thing with adoptees. Like we go through a lot of things on our own just by default. Not because we want to, not because we asked to. It's just what life has given us. Is that's just how the cookie has crumbled for us. And so, when you don't have a community, when you don't have loving and supportive family members to go through it with you, things like and days like Mother's Day become like a let me take a deep breath. I know this day is coming. Let me mentally prepare. Let me, show honor to those who are there and has been there. But also let me have my own morning, you know, space for the biological mother that brought me into this world. Let me honor her birthday. Let me do those things. And to have to do those alone sometimes is a little, it's almost like when it started getting dark early and you like, it's like that kind of like that seasonal depression, right? I think adoptees
Hmm.
through a lot of different seasonal depressions, because there are a lot of seasons that we go through that we're reminded that we were given up, or, parental rights were given to CPS, or that we didn't get to experience this family tradition in our own biological families. So yeah, everyone definitely has their own experiences with Mother's Day, for sure. For sure, for sure, for sure. I saw another question before we go, Chelsea, before we get to the second video and the second half, part two of this, adoptees navigating through the fog. Have you ever thought about family therapy with your adoptive parents on the subject, so it is a safe space for everyone to overcome these unhealed thoughts? The answer to that is yes. I have thought about it. I have even suggested it. I have a growth mindset. Okay. I have a growth mindset. I do not have a fixed mindset. Growth mindset says, yes, this happened to us, but we're not going to allow it to define us, but we're also going to be honest about what is happening and how we can move forward. Someone who has gone through personal therapy myself, it was very beneficial for me and I needed it. And some people don't feel like they need that extra, the extra assistance with what they have going on in life. Again, when you expose the truth, it makes you uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't want to go through those phases of growth. And because growth is not just okay, today everything's going to be all right. No, growth is work. Growth is putting in the work. And some people just have a fixed mindset. And I think that, also within my mom and dad, I think my mom would be open to it. I don't think that my dad would be open to it. I think it would be something where he's just like, I don't need it. I've heard that before. I don't need to go to therapy. What I need to go to therapy for, and so unfortunately, when you deal with those type of responses and that type of reaction to a suggestion, that's all it can be, a suggestion, until, God changes heart. I always say, I don't know if y'all probably only been watching, since the Adoptee Foster. I know a lot of Leon Peoples is over here. But if you've ever been watching me and, the Real Precious and how long I've been doing this, I always say only Jesus saves, right? I'm only human. I can't save nobody. Only God can change the heart of others. And so I can't rush God's timing, because God's timing is a thing all in itself, right? It's a realm of reality that we can't even tap into. We can just be hopeful that things change. We can be hopeful that things move in a different direction, but only God saves. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, because we can want what we want, in this journey of adoption, whether it's reunification, whether it's growth within the adoption, whether it's, us being honest about our adoption, getting through the fog of what we're, talking about now. Right now, like I said, adoptive parents can also be in the fog. Adoptive parents can also deny. Adoptive parents can also defend. They can also go through those stages of fog on the other side of it, right? We're on one side and they're on the other side. I do want to play this video because it's going to lead us into the next few stages.
Are you adopted?
I am adopted. Not only am I adopted, I'm a late discovery adoptee. I'm an accidental discovery.
You were not.
Accidental discovery. Now we can put two and two together and we know what accidental mean, and we know what discovery mean, okay?
An accident.
No, I'm not an accident, but the discovery. I made a comment about not looking like anyone in the family, and a relative responded, that's because you're adopted. So day before my 42nd birthday.
What does it
42nd birthday. So for 41,
That's diabolical.
you don't know that you're adopted. Somebody tells you that you're adopted the day before you were born.
That's somebody that don't like you in your family.
But when you tell somebody the truth, now I do feel like people are dangerous with the truth sometimes. I know a few people who dangerous with the truth that just let anything slip out their mouth just because they just feel like they could just say it, right?
You know how you in like, you know how you like in the heat of passion of like an argument or something and or a disagreement and somebody just blurb out, oh, well, guess what? You're adopted. Whoa.
Yeah, that's dangerous because you know how they say, the tongue is like a two-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
The tongue is like a two-edged sword, and in that situation, the tongue was definitely a two-edged sword because she says, I don't look like anyone in my family. And the next response is, now we don't know, the dynamic in which she said it. We don't know if she was just saying things. We don't know if, because when you know that you don't belong, that's why I don't understand why they be like, oh, babies don't know and they're raised and they're loved and no, babies.
I wish I had
don't.
a picture that I could show everybody of me when I was a kid. I'm gonna download it, put it on my computer for next time. But like, listen, I had curly blonde hair and green eyes, and I looked like nobody in my family.
Yeah, like it's just like we're avoiding the elephant in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while this family member told her that she was adopted, it's almost like you don't like the truth, but you got to accept the truth, and now you got to deal with the truth, right? And so of course you wouldn't want to find out this way, but were you ever going to find out? Like sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. It's like, okay, I didn't think you was going to tell me like this. I thought, maybe we would have had a sit down to let me know, but since I know now, what do I do with this bomb that was just dropped in my lap?
She's
Feel
got on
like
a black adoptee
to
meetup
be
shirt.
adopted.
I'm sorry.
She's got on a black adoptee meetup shirt, 2024, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, that's the one that was in Atlanta.
Initially, it was alienating. It was life-altering. I really didn't know how it felt because, again, for 42 years, I was operating as a kept person.
Operating as a kept person. I've never heard anyone say it like that. A kept person, meaning she was in a family that she thought her parents gave birth to her and kept her, I thought it was interesting she put it that way.
So to have your whole life shifted, your foundation shifted, I often say it's like being a branch on a tree and that branch is removed because you can never replace that branch in any one place. So it feels like you don't belong anywhere. It's been a 15-year journey.
Yeah.
I'm in a much healthier place.
15 years, y'all, on top of life, just on top of life being life. Like, you know what I mean? She found out when she was a day before turning 42, a 15-year journey, and it came out of nowhere for her, right? So the fog happened very later in life for her. It happened at 42. It didn't happen when she was a teenager. It didn't happen when she, got out of college. It happened at 42, a point in your life where you're probably already, in your career. You may have children yourself. She's a woman. So, perimenopause may be creeping up. Like a lot of things could be happening. Again, this seasonal depression for adoptees. Now, this is a different season in her life. Now she's learning that she is adopted and she has to learn who she is in the midst of all of this because she was living one life and realized that she's attached to a whole nother family's life. And they, who know, well, they have to know, but in 42 years, they have been detached from her and she has no clue. You hear these stories all the time. We were in, just like you, we grew up in the same neighborhood. You walking past your family members and you don't even know. You don't even know.
In space, but I share the real because there are so many adoptees on a continuum. There are some that just don't know what they don't know. There are some in denial. There are some immersed in learning. There are others who are comfortable and have reconciled all the worlds. So I'm closer to reconciling all of my worlds.
So she pretty much talked about the fog without going into a lot of detail. She pretty much just listed them. There are people who don't know what they don't know, right? And so those are the people that is denial. Like, I'm an adoptee, it happened to me, I got adopted. And I feel like more so those are adoptees who are told very, very early that they're adopted, and they were raised in their family for a very long time, and so they have gotten a full family experience with their adoptive parents, and they feel as though their adoptive parents, or not even feel as though, the fact is their adoptive parents have loved them, nurtured them. They have gone on probably to secondary education, moved on, probably had kids, got married, things of that nature, and they feel as though adoption was just something that happened to them. And then there are people who are seeking and learning and putting themselves in the heart of the conversations and reading books like The Primal Wound, and really trying to understand how adoption is impacting them. And they go through this fog, and then you have your healing journey of mending and meshing both worlds together to really know who you are, the real you. Like she says, she shares the real because not a lot of people do. Not a lot of people will be honest with you in the stages and phases that adoptees go through. All right, so we're going to get to the next few phases.
Deconstructing. Adoptee fears the fallout from questioning.
Let's go back a little bit.
He fears the fallout from questioning their long-held beliefs about adoption. Confusion takes over. Adoptees face the knowledge that they can no longer live in the fantasy of their carefully constructed adoption narrative. They fear being abandoned again, and are terrified that the abyss of emotions that they have repressed for a lifetime will engulf them and eventually drown them.
So phase 5, deconstructing, right? You fear the fallout from questioning their long-held beliefs about adoption. And that usually comes after you find out that you're adopted and you get to a point in your life where you do have these questions and you do have these thoughts, but you don't want it to disrupt your adopted family's regular scheduled routine. Okay. Monday night, we might go to prayer, church, school, after school practices and things like that. Tuesday, Wednesday is Bible study child. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we going back to church. Like, you don't want it to disrupt anything, because when marriages go through something, like a lot of marriages keep the issues away from the kids, right? Like, we don't want to disrupt the house and things of that nature. Well, imagine being adopted and now you're the child and you're having issues and you don't want it to disrupt the household or the regular scheduled routine of what's going on. But you have all this confusion and you have all these questions, and you really don't want to bring it up, because what if your adoptive parents say, why are you bringing this up? It's none of your business. Why I don't have a college fund for you, right? Like, we talked about that in the other live. Like, why are you bringing this up? Why is this any of your business? We got a fund for the other child and we don't have one for you. Like, you fear, as an adoptee, you fear that these people aren't going to love you anymore. And most children who are in foster care and want to be adopted, they're looking for someone to love them. They're looking for someone to be there for them and care for them and, be nurturing. And so why would I bother them with these feelings? They don't want to hear that. They don't want to, experience that with me. They want to go through the good times with me. They want to have their firsts with me, why would I want to bring that up? So phase 5 is deconstructing, is really sitting down and saying, wait, hold on. This is bothering me. And I do want to know where I come from. And I do want to meet my biological family. But if I say something, they might look at me weird. They might not love me as much. They might not pay me attention anymore. They might be mad at me. This might make them feel uncomfortable. So I'm just gonna just repress my feelings and hope that they just go away.
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't know how my mother was going to react, my adopted mom,
Mm-hmm.
because we had never, like, I knew, but like, we never delved into that world, like, it was, like you said, um, get up, go to school, come home, do your homework, clean up your bedroom, dinner's ready, go to sleep. Like, it was routine, but I was willing to take that chance.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to be uncomfortable, and I was ready to deal with whatever situation or whatever way she would lean. And in my mind and my gut, I was like, I'm scared as I don't know what,
Mm.
because I don't know what this will be.
Right.
But it actually turned out to be better than what my outcome, you know, was expected to be.
Mm.
And like I said, I said earlier, my she went with me, my my adopted mom went with me when I met my birth grandmother. And so that really solidified my confidence in her to support me,
Mm-hmm.
because she didn't have to do that. She didn't have to um take a back seat to my emotions. Like, she was like a sidekick, right? So she was just whatever, whatever flow I was flowing in, for those conversations and those moments. She was there, not necessarily saying that she could make it better, or, it was just the point that she was there
Right.
was the biggest thing for me. And I knew from that point forward, like, whatever I decided to do, she would be with it. She would be cool with it, and she would be there when I had questions. Or, like I said, I was asking her tons of questions after that. Like, what, how long should I wait before I call? When you, like, for people that don't know, like, when you find out all this information, it's like you're a little kid again. It's like you are wanting to know this information so bad, but you also can't push the other party too much, because then, sometimes people have, like, they might think that you're trying to come after something, or you're wanting to ask for money or something. That was not my case at all. Like, I was just really wanting to know. I wanted to see who I looked like. Um, I wish I could airdrop this picture so you guys could see. I show Precious, my father, and I'm basically like his twin.
Yep.
And
Let's see if I
so,
let's see if
um,
I can share it. Can I share it?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
And so, really, you're just trying to see who you look like, because obviously, I don't look like anybody in my family. So I'm like, I want to set eyes on, who I look like. And it is actually kind of scary when you think about when she shows this picture. um, and so I think, yeah, it's important to have somebody that can support you, especially your parents, because they may not even be able to do anything, right? Like, so that's not the point. The point is that she, you know, like if I was her father and she came to me and was like, I want to look for my birth parents, I would be all for it because um, that's a connection that they will never understand.
Yeah.
That's it's just something that you will never get. Um, while the picture loads. Oh, that's the video.
Hold on, child. You know I'm working with this bootleg. Hold
You
on.
need to get a wired mouse. So that's me, obviously, on the right, and that's my biological father on the left.
Twins.
And ironically, we got the same pose. I didn't do this on purpose.
Mhm.
So, um, you know, I just wanted to see who I look like, and I hoping that I can connect with some extended family members, but we'll see. To be to be determined.
Especially when you don't look like anybody in your adopted family. It's almost like it's almost like
It's
sometimes
unfair.
adopted parents want you to have this blind eye to the obvious. And a lot of times it's because they haven't, prepared themselves. And when life happens, it comes at you fast. Right. And so we have to be prepared, especially in this community of adopted children, because there will come a time when you are old enough, when you are wise enough, when you have control over your own life, when you have access to what
Hmm.
information that is out here in this world, when you have all of that, you will take it upon yourself to search. And there are some people who get weary in searching, right? Because there is a weariness that you do get in searching. There was a weariness that I got when I was searching for my father. It was just like, nothing's working. I'm getting tired. Like it's making my soul tired. Like I wrote a letter, it came back undeliverable. He's not at that address. It was almost like, not to say that he didn't want to be found, but he also didn't know I was looking for him either, and now to know my father and to have met him, we're so much alike, very much alike. I look very similar. I'm about to send you a picture of him. I look very, maybe I'll drop an exclusive. Maybe I'll drop an exclusive. We're very much alike. He likes to kind of just do his own thing. I'm the same way. I like to just do my own thing. I never, ever wanted to attach myself to a crowd or, I just like my own peace. He's the same exact way. But looking for him, I grew weary. And then when I found him, and that story is crazy in itself too, because I found my brother, which is his son, before I found him because he's a junior. And I could tell that they had a strained relationship because when I met my brother, it was like, so you want to tell Pops about me? Like, what's up? Like, and at that time we didn't know. I knew, right? Just like, when you're not when you're not a part of the family,
Hmm.
part of your adopted family, I knew that was my biological brother. When I saw his children spitting images of my daughter, like I just knew that this was my brother. But I knew that they had a strained relationship because it wasn't like he was eager to tell our father that he had a sister. And so, men don't be knowing. Like men don't know when they have children out here. I mean, not to make it sound like y'all just be planting seeds everywhere, but you see all these, you are not the father, situations, whereas men don't know. So even if my brother did tell him, he wasn't like, okay, I have a daughter, I want to meet her, I want to, still wanting to be to himself, living his life. But when I met him, he was like, I'm so glad that you were looking for me. You know, I'm just so glad that you didn't stop looking for me. I had no idea that you existed and things of that nature. So, you know, when you are looking, you can become weary, especially if you are not getting the results that,
Hmm.
you know, you want to get.
Yeah, especially. Look at there.
So that's me and that's my father. And we look alike. Even a baby picture of my daughter, it was like, whoa, she looks just like him, even in the baby as a baby. And so, you know, I, I think that these are just not things that we are, you know, that we in the adoption community prepare for. There, you know, this reunification is just not something that's brought up because adoption is a lifelong thing. And
Hmm.
I don't know if they don't think about this, but to make us feel crazy for wanting to know where we come from when they're in a family full of relatives, full of biological family, it almost seems selfish. You know, it almost seems very selfish. And that's the part that I don't like about it, because it's like you have the gift of your family, and yes, you adopted me, but at the same time, I would also like the gift of at least knowing or at least meeting, you know, that would help me in my journey, because you can't be who they are. And I think that's another place the fear comes into, when they know they can't take the place of your biological family, but they're doing the best that they can to be your family. You know what I mean? And it's not that we're ungrateful for that, but that duality makes us want to know where we come from, and we shouldn't be, you know, we shouldn't be looked down upon, or we shouldn't be there shouldn't be any anger towards us because we want to do that. And I think that
Hmm.
a lot of people, like you said, you were scared to go ask your mom, you were scared to share that, because it's like, I know you're my mom, but I also want to meet the person who gave birth to me, you know. And us not knowing how they're going to react to that, we're apprehensive of even bringing that up. And so a lot of people don't. A lot of people wait till their adoptive parents die. It's sad to say, but a lot of them do. A lot of people, a lot of adoptees wait because they don't want their adoptive parents to feel disrespected by them going on this journey. And that shouldn't be the case at all. You shouldn't be waiting for someone to pass away in order to find out who you are, because you're also prolonging your own life. You're also stunting your own emotional growth by not being honest with yourself and not being real with yourself, and having those uncomfortable conversations with the people that raised you, that loved you, that instilled, you know, love inside of you. But I
Hmm.
also feel, you know, sometimes, again, we don't know how to come to them with these conversations. So if we don't know how to come to them, they're not going to know how to come to us, because that's not their mission. Their mission isn't to be talking to us about our biological family after they done after they done you know took us, not took us, but you know adopted us from the family, right? It's not like, oh, let's go meet them, let's go have lunch with them. That's not their focus. Their focus is their family, but they have to understand that their family consists of a child that was a part of another family. You know, that is a reality. There two things are existing at one time.
But on one hand, like in a way, I kind of knew she was going to be okay with it, but I still was afraid, like because um just because you have a feeling like somebody will support you, that doesn't mean that they will. Like, so I still
Yeah.
had to go through that, conversation. And you have to pick the vibe too. You can't just walk up to somebody and be like, "Hey, I want to I want to look for my parents." Like, no, I had to. I can remember the day. Like, this is when we still had plastic covers on the couches.
Ooh, when it was hot, your thighs just
Hmm.
stuck to that. My grandma had them couches. Oh, my adopted grandma, she had them couches. We like, oh, like, why my thighs?
But I had to like catch the vibe of my mom, my adopted mom. Like I had to figure out, what their vibe was for that day. And then this was going on for a few months. Like this was I was like, man, she don't seem like she ready to talk about this right now.
Mm.
I'm like, then one day I was like, forget it. I'm just going. I'll be like, hey, mom, can we talk for a minute? She was like, sure. I said, I want to look for my birth family. I'm longing for this connection, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. And you know, she was like, whatever you need. And you don't know how good that made me feel that day. Like from that point forward, she was, like I said, she was like when I drove to Tennessee to see my parents, um, she was like, you need me to send you some gas money? You want me to pack you some lunch? You want, what do you want me to do? Basically. She was like, I'm here, to help you, to give you what you need. Um, and I was like, man, those are the best words that somebody that's going along on this journey can hear from their parents. Like,
Mhm.
or even from somebody that they're close to. Like, even if it's not your parents, like if it's your spouse, right? So, because this is not just a journey that ends, once you meet your family. Like it's a lifelong, it's a journey that will never end. Um, and, you know, really, like you say, you just need someone that understands, you know, even talking to you, um, throwing ideas off or just listening to how you went about it is, there's multiple ways you could go about doing things, right? Like, so you say your sister basically reached out, and that kick started the journey for you. And, you know, you just need somebody that's willing to, go the extra mile a little bit. And, she was like, all right, enough of this, so, um, kudos, to your family. I'm really happy to ride along with your journey. Um, what's going on, Coach Ferg?
Coach Ferg is in the building. He says, do fathers sign adoption rights on their children? So I'm assuming he's asking if biological fathers give up their parental rights um, from their children. And honestly, the truth is, I believe in some states a father's signature is required. However, if there is no father mentioned or no father around, then no, the signature does not have to be obtained. I believe I saw something, I thought I sent it to you. Um, and we were discussing this, like, the father, there was a situation where the father didn't even know the child was given up for adoption. And he was trying to get, in contact with the child. But in most cases, fathers do not sign to give up their parental rights. I believe it's just the mother who does that. And again, that's another reason why reunification is the goal for foster care. Because if the mother is saying that she's unfit, then yes, they will try and find the father. They will try to find other family members to care for the child. But if that is not the case, then adoption is, or either staying in foster care and
Hmm.
then aging out, or adoption is the the move. Because you have kids who are eligible for adoption, and then you have kids who are not eligible for adoption. And I'm going to have to go into that because I want to know what makes a child not eligible for adoption. And I can't really say that I know what that is right now at this moment. Like I
I
said,
think so I, funny you say that. I came across something exactly about that. So
mhm,
um they give parents like a pamphlet basically telling them like all of these characteristics that the child has displayed, right? But they don't actually break down why they're actually that way, right? Like, so if they say they're distant or like they say, they're um, not eating or whatever the case may be, right? So it's really, they're not explaining what's in this pamphlet and why the kid is actually that way. So a lot of parents or soon to be parents, they read that and they're like, oh, well, this is going to be like a problem child.
mhm,
We don't, we
mm,
don't want that.
okay,
And so what they're not doing is they're not elaborating on how the child got that way or, what circumstances caused them to actually go into these different behavior patterns.
okay. I'm definitely going to look into that. Um, because so many kids age out of the foster care system and don't get adopted. And so I'm definitely going to take a wild guess here and say those are the children who aren't eligible for adoption. And I, I I I just think that aging out of the adoption, aging out of foster care is like throwing a child to the wolves, because you really aren't preparing them. For one, they don't really have a solid foundation. It's very shaky. It's very transient. They're going from house to house, and you also don't have a fair chance of being a productive adult in the world without the support. Now, of course, there are children and kids and adults who turn their lives around for the better because they use their background and their history as fuel to be better, and to overcome the odds and beat the statistics. But then you have so many who end up homeless, a lot who actually go to the army, to serve the country because they know they'll have a hot meal, they'll have, free education. A lot of the army is composed of children who age out of the foster care agency, or foster care system. A lot of inmates are aged out foster care children, because they knew nothing, and so they pretty much knew nothing but the streets. Right? They're in and out of homes. They probably don't want to be in these homes, like you said, these behavioral problems, and it has caused them to get into trouble in which they got to be behind a wall and sit for a while, and probably not given any type of education, any type of mental services or anything else like that, in jail. So a lot of detention centers are filled with children who are in foster care, who are aging out. Detention centers, places where behavioral issues are the reasons why they're there. So it's sad, but I definitely wanna do, we're gonna get back into the video, but I definitely want to do a, uh, live on
Number
this.
6, drowning. As feared, the adoptee is now flooded by intense emotions while facing the compounded losses in their story. Anger, resentment, and sorrow may be directed at their biological parents, adoptive parents, self, society, church, and/or the adoption system. They may also experience a shock to their nervous system, which may result in an emotional shutdown. This is important. They will need to move through all the stages of grief or risk getting stuck in this phase. I myself am not an adopter.
So drowning phase is just what it sounds like. You are drowning in your emotions. You now resent, your biological mom. I remember there was a period of time where I was just like, I hate her. Why does she do this? Why does she choose drugs over us? Why, are we in this situation? There was a point in time I didn't like my adoptive parents, where it was just like, send me back. I don't want to be here. I don't want, like, you just have all these emotions and you have no outlet for it. You have no comfort for it. You have no, safe space for it. And so it just lives inside of you. And, unfortunately, a lot of, adoptees will, harm themselves because they're going inward and the inward feelings are not coming out. And so they harm themselves thinking that they're doing it to themselves and that other people around them aren't going to be affected, and they're not included because they're not feeling the feelings that they're feeling. And so this is a very dangerous part of the fog, drowning, because like it said at the end, you will get stuck here if you don't go through the stages of grief. And grief comes from loss. And if you don't acknowledge the loss, if you don't, save space, a safe space for the child to be able to grieve properly in a healthy manner, then the child will feel like they're drowning in their own thoughts and their own feelings. And no, they won't bring it to you because they don't want you to feel uncomfortable. No, they won't bring it to you because they don't want you to feel hurt that you're, having these thoughts and having these feelings. And so you're stuck with it. You're very much stuck with it and you don't know what to do. I worked in restaurants, and they always say that those who have served kind of get they kind of get used to hot dishes, right? And burning their fingertips and burning their fingerprints off because they're always, dealing with hot plates. Well, child, I never got used to the hot plates. Okay, napkin, a towel, and something. I ain't about to put this down here with my bare hand. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to get used to this feeling. And so adoptees that are in the drowning phase get used to just swirling around in their own thoughts. They're in their own feelings, and they don't have anyone, and I mean anyone, to talk to about it. And the drowning continues for them, which sadly in some cases does result in adoptees harming themselves because they have no one. So now we have phase 7, which is developing.
Adoptee. I am, however, a first mom, a birth mom to my 12-year-old daughter. We are currently on phase number 7. Let's go. Phase 7, developing. Adoptee recognizes and begins to accept that there are both gains and losses in adoption. The overwhelming grief and loss and the desire to protect others will no longer rule their lives or determine their future. They begin developing a more integrated sense of self based on all aspects of their adoption story.
So developing to me is pretty much acceptance. This is you accepting that I was adopted. I have this biological family, but I also have my adoptive family. It took me counseling and therapy to really regulate my emotions that surrounded adoption, that has surrounded my feelings inside of adoption. It helped me have different feelings towards the loss in my story. I think that the developing stage is more so accepting that adoption was good for me and that adoption also affected me in ways that I needed to express in order for me to be honest with myself, and in order for me to clear, that chakra of it being stuck in my stomach, right? Or here in my chest or here in my head. Like, if you don't clear your chakra, it's like there's no way that you're going to ever really be aligned with certain things in life. And I think that with adoption, it is something that gets stuck inside of you. It's almost like, like you're having those conversations with your mom, like, I'm scared, like that feeling before you go on like a roller, for me, because I'm scared of roller coasters. So it's that feeling that you get before you're about to go on a roller coaster. Some people feel exhilarated, some people feel excited, like, yes, let's do this, risk takers, and then some people are like, I don't want to, like, don't make me do it.
I'm the same way. Like, I can't,
like, oh, my stomach, but that is the developing stage. The developing stage is knowing both sides, and when I say knowing both sides, meaning accepting both sides, you don't have to necessarily know your biological family yet, but you know that not knowing them has affected you. And so now you're on this journey of being able to regulate your emotions enough where you can speak about it, you can talk about it, you can be open about it, you can feel comfortable speaking to your, adoptive parents about it, but most importantly, be honest with yourself about it. And then we get into the last phase, which is
Phase 8, deciding. A new identity emerges for the adoptee as pain subsides and pride replaces shame in the understanding of one's unique story. They decide how they will move forward in life and in their relationships. And then they continue on the next leg of their lifelong journey, which is the healing path.
And so those are the 8 phases of the fog. Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to get something up here. There we go. Let me see if I can take it away and then bring it back. So again, you have disengaging, which means adoption is just a fact about me. You have denying, which means adoption doesn't matter. Defending, adoption maybe matters, but only in positive ways. Discerning, maybe adoption is more complicated than originally, though. Deconstructing, adoption is way more complicated than originally thought. Drowning, which is adoption is so complicated, it's emotionally overwhelming. This is, and remember, this is the phase that a lot of people get stuck in. It's so complicated that it's emotionally overwhelming. The complications can happen within that reunification process, right? How do I get the contacts? Who do I contact? Why aren't these people reaching back out to me? Why am I not getting the responses that I used to get? Emotionally overwhelming.
You talking about me?
A little bit. And not even that. It could also be, it's complicated because you have no one to talk to about all this stuff. Overwhelming means it's really taking over your emotional capacity that you have. You can't even, feel other things for other aspects of your life because you're trying to figure out who you are. And I don't think that a lot of people really understand the depth and the weight that is being an adoptee, of not knowing or finding out when you're 42 that you're adopted. And now you gotta, figure out, you're in your 40s, which means it might be a slim chance to none that you might meet your adoptive mother and father. It puts you in a phase of, you robbed me of this information about myself, and now I have to discover who I am all over again. Especially with the medical history thing, right? We always talk about going to the doctors and, oh, do you have a history of this? I don't know. I'm adopted. I don't know, and having to say I don't know sometimes is honestly embarrassing because
it's like, what do you mean you don't know? You 40 years old and you don't know? Yeah. I feel so terrible when I go to the doctor because they were like, are you allergic to any no idea.
Right. Now that I, have a relationship with my dad, he goes through his health issues, and I just keep my ears open. I listen to, how he is managing his health issues and things of that nature. But in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, like, I could possibly have that one day. You know what I mean? I could possibly have high blood pressure one day. I could possibly be taking these medicines to get my blood sugar down and things of that nature. So it even the health part alone is overwhelming of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm developing a whole sense of self, including how adoption and relinquishment affected me. So 7 is really, diving in and getting to not the end of the fog, but you're actually seeing things for what they are, right? You're seeing things for what they are, and you're accepting things for what they are. And then 8 is deciding. And 8 is deciding in the last phase of fog, but it doesn't mean that you're completely outside of the fog, because at this point, now you can decide with more awareness all of what I want my life to be and mean to me as a whole adopted person. And that is where we want adoptees to really get to. I'm going to play this video once again of the woman who, and for those who may not have seen it and have, joined us a little later, but she talks about getting to this phase of being able to make sense of her world.
Hello?
Are you adopted?
I am adopted. Not only am I adopted, I'm a late discovery adoptee. I'm an accidental discovery.
You were not an accident.
No, I'm not an accident, but the discovery. I made a comment about not looking like anyone in the family, and a relative responded, "That's because you're adopted." So, day before my 42nd birthday.
What does it feel like to be adopted?
Initially, it was alienating. It was life-altering. I really didn't know how it felt because, again, for 42 years, I was operating as a kept person. So to have your whole life shifted, your foundation shifted, I often say it's like being a branch on a tree and that branch is removed, because you can never replace that branch in any one place. So it feels like you don't belong anywhere. It's been a 15-year journey.
Yeah.
I'm in a much healthier place and space, but I share the real because there are so many adoptees on a continuum. There are some that just don't know what they don't know. There are some in denial. There are some immersed in learning. There are others who are comfortable and have reconciled all the worlds. So I'm closer to reconciling all of my worlds. Only am I adopted.
So, like she says, she's closer to reconciling all of her worlds. And again, that goes to deciding, really not only deciding, but developing, right? Developing a whole sense of self, including how adoption and relinquishment affected me, and deciding with more awareness all of what I want my life to be and mean to me as a whole adopted person. And that's why I always say be real with yourself so you can be real with everyone else. Because as an adoptee, when you can't be real with yourself, it's hard to be real with everybody else, especially in a world of other people who may not be adopted. Because for so long, you're being placed inside of a family where it's not that you can't be yourself, but you also have to assimilate to the family that you're placed in. Imagine, adopting a child from China and now they have to get comfortable in this white family. Are they taught to be real with themselves, or are they taught the culture, just like the video we watched last week of the boy who was adopted by the white family, and he said, white is my culture, like I identify with being white. And it's like, how can you be real with yourself when you don't acknowledge the truth about yourself? And so you're in adoption fog when you're not able to identify the truth about yourself. And it doesn't have to be a negative thing. Adoption, we don't talk about it as it's a bad thing. We talk about it in that there are uncomfortable things within adoption that no one talks about, because no one wants to sit in the uncomfortable truth of what adoption brings. And as long as you're not sitting in the uncomfortable truth about what adoption brings, you're not being real with yourself. And in turn, you can't be real with other people. And so that's why that has always been my tagline, because I had to get to a place in my life where I can exist in both worlds, but still be who I am and be very comfortable with who I am, and not be fearful of hurting other people's feelings or making them feel uncomfortable. And even if that is the case, even if their feelings are hurt, or even if they are uncomfortable, I can sleep well at night knowing that I'm real with myself. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not trying to prove anything to you. I'm not trying to be someone or something that I'm not. I just want to be me on my own terms. I don't want to have to, be this person that you desired to be in your family because you had a vision of your family. Because again, when we get older enough and in our adult ages, we're able to decide and choose for ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we're trying to get away from what our adoptive family has instilled in us or the values that they have put inside of us or anything like that. It just means that we know who we are wholeheartedly, just like the adopted people that adopted us, they know who they are wholeheartedly, right? And they walk in their truth. And so we should be able to do the same thing without making other people feel uncomfortable. And honestly, if my truth makes you feel uncomfortable, only Jesus saves. That's my answer. Only Jesus saves. There's nothing I can do, only only Jesus saves. So, sometimes you got to ask God to examine your heart and really dive into why you feel a certain type of way about something. Because if someone is living in their truth and it makes you feel a certain type of way, that has nothing to do with the person living in their truth. You have to figure out why you're uncomfortable with their truth. And I hope and pray that adoptive parents get to a place where they are able to sit in an uncomfortable truth with their adoptee, and they're able to stand, that pain, or able to stand the conversations that are birthed from that uncomfortableness, because it's only then where you're going to grow with your adoptee. Like you were saying, it meant the world to you that your mom was able to go with you to visit your biological family. She didn't have to. She could have said, you're on your own. She could have just not addressed it. But she just said, you know what? I don't have the answers, but I can be present. Right. And sometimes someone's presence is all, especially as adoptees, because we are detached. Right. Sometimes we just want somebody's presence to be there, someone's genuineness to be there. You don't have to have the answers. You don't have to say the right things. You don't have to touch me or hug me, or, if that's not your thing. But being there is just as important, because it's saying a lot without saying a lot. So,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the presence of people who care about you in the moments where you need them is really what love is. Because, like you said, um, you know, maybe she didn't have the answers, or sometimes they just don't. It's like when somebody passed away, right? Like, when when you're trying to find the right words to say and not be offensive and not sound condescending and not sound, robotic about, how you are trying to relay your feelings to that person, whether they're in your family or not, because, everybody say, condolences, that's the cliche robotic thing to say. But like, if you want to stand out, say something that's actually from your heart, or just, send like you know, just send them a personal note, and not even, because sometimes we can't find the words when people pass away, but being there, showing support is the way that you show the person that you actually care. Because it's like, obviously we can't bring the person back, that's not, that's not in our power, but like, at least being there, like you said, showing support, giving hugs, or whatever the case may be, right? It is basically from that point forward. I was on cloud nine after that. I was like, anything else, will be, it'll be what it will be, right?
yeah.
And so, um, it's important, and I never even thought about, you know, surrounding myself with people who are adopted when I was coming up, because
Nobody does.
I never, you know, it's like, why, why isn't that a thing? Like, why are you the first I'm about to be 49 years old, and why are you the first person I met that's adopted? What is wrong with this story?
It's a very underserved community. The adoption agencies teach parents to make adoptees feel like they are not different, and that is far from the truth. The first difference is the parental child relationship. Like, that's different,
Mhm.
that especially 8-year-old, it's very different, so we can't act and pretend like it's not,
Mhm.
and children, I believe that children know the truth in their heart and their soul because they don't know anything else. They don't have the life experiences to teach them evil. So all they know is purity. And so to think that you pulling a fast one over on a child, to me, is unloving. It's 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 a little bit cynical. Adults are the ones who have control and decision making over children, and they think that they are leading a child in one direction when the child knows. A child knows, they just don't have the language. They don't know how to approach it. They don't really have the authority either, because they are a class of people who children are a class of people where adults have authority over them. And so to think that children aren't going to innately know the truth about who they are, and for people to purposely withhold things for them, to me, is just unloving. It's unloving.
Mhm.
You can't say that you love a child if you're willing to withhold facts about them in their life, and then get angry when they stumble across these facts, or get angry when these facts come looking for them, or get angry when they decide to, want to know more about where they come from. Again, early and often. I think that the issue with adoption, I don't think that there's a problem with people adopting children. I think that there's a problem with the miseducation about adoption towards adoptive parents. If you're going to encourage adoption for parents who can't naturally have their own kids, then fully prepare them for the experience. And will you know every exact situation that will come up? No, but that's where adoptees come in, to play. Um, Next live I'm going to share, because we've been going on pretty long tonight, but next live I'm going to share a agency, or organization, I should say, of where, if you would like to be an advocate for an adoptee, because this is my next step, to be an advocate for one adoptee, where it's almost like I'm their mentor. And like I said, I don't think that there's anything wrong with people adopting children, but I think that adoptive parents should listen to adoptees more, because then they would get an inside scoop. And even the adoptees that they adopt, like the actual children that they adopt, listen to them more about their experience in adoption, because people could be in the same situation and experience it two different ways. And I think that, when you share your experience with the people that you're experiencing it with, it will open your eyes on things that you find that you probably could have handled in a different way, or you find that you probably should have got help before, you got it. And so I think that, in these situations, there needs to be a lot more education. There also needs to be a lot more community within adoptees. Like you said, you about to be 49 years old and you've never met another adopted person. Why aren't we given the resources to, hang out with other people who are like us, who have had shared experiences with us? What is it something that they never thought of? Or are they scared that adoptees might come together and reunite and just start a revolution, and just start leaving these homes? Like, I don't know, but at the same time, it would be great for, because when you go to school and you're adopted, your teachers know that you're adopted. it's not that they just see your first and last name and just call your name and things of that nature. Like they know that when I was going into the 4th grade and my name was changing from my biological name to my adopted name, and I would see one report card say this and one report card say that, my teacher was aware that I was going through an adoption process. And so,
How would they know? Like, do they
well,
have paperwork or?
yeah, they have paperwork. I literally came from North Jersey to another part of Jersey. Like they had to know my back history. Um, Counselors had to know. Like they are aware of these things. The teachers have to know.
I didn't know that.
Yes, teachers know. They know, especially when you first get adopted, you're going into school. They are aware of that. Now, I can't say that my high school teachers probably knew, but my elementary school teachers definitely knew because
Well, I think yeah, they would. Well, I mean, just because your last name is changing, that doesn't mean that they knew. I'm just saying, like, because like you could easily, your parents could easily get married, and then your last name would change.
true, but
Um.
when you enroll in school, you have to show birth certificates.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to show, documents
Mhm.
to enroll your child into a school. And
Mhm.
so, because I was going into the 4th grade and this school started at kindergarten, they like, okay, where you coming from? What's your history? Where are you getting transferred from? Um,
Mhm.
Schools in Jersey City, I think, were a little bit behind schools that were in South Jersey. So I also had to go to different classes to be, to get up to a certain level of
Mhm.
education as well, in addition to the classes that I already had. So I would be taken out of class and sent to another class and things of that nature. So teachers are definitely, when the process is in process before it's,
Mhm.
because I don't think it was it wasn't finalized yet. And so, or at least maybe the paperwork wasn't filed, or the filing wasn't finalized, because my name,
Mhm.
like I said, there were some report cards that I had my biological name, some I didn't. So they know. And so it would be nice if there was some type of, I don't know, maybe they don't want you to feel different. Like, I think it all plays into, let's just act like everybody's normal. Let's just act like this is not a thing.
But we
But
know that's not true.
right, we know, again, we know it's not true. Nobody wants to sit in the uncomfortable truth, right? Nobody wants to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth. Let's just act like everybody is the same. And within acting like everyone is the same is what throws the adoptee into the fog even further. And again, that drowning phase is the phase that a lot of adoptees stay in and get stuck in.
Mhm.
So yeah, try to act like the circumstances isn't there, right? And again, you can't fool children. Like, I don't know why people be trying to fool children as if they doing something, because you're not. Children know. And the worst thing is for a child to resent you because they knew something that you were hiding, and then you continue to hide it. But then at 42 years old, you find out that you adopted. I mean, what are you building a relationship with this child for, all for it to come to ruins because you weren't honest, or because you didn't want to have these conversations, or because you were protecting your own feelings and not thinking about the feelings of the child who will
Man, to
turn
be a
it.
fly on the wall for that conversation, how did that, where, what sparked that evil madness? 'Cause that's an evil person to do that. Like somebody, um, that's not the responsibility. That should be the responsibility of the adopted parents to tell her that, like not some family member down the line that's just being evil for no reason.
And we don't know that this person's being evil. Was it their place to tell her? Not necessarily. But at the same time, was it, you don't look like anybody in the family because you were adopted. It again, it sucks that it had to happen that way, but I'm glad that it happened. Like sometimes you got to be thankful that certain things happen, because yeah, people can say, well, that disrupted her life. And, if she would have never known, she probably wouldn't have been depressed, or she probably wouldn't have been through da 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 da. But at the end of the day, you have to know who you are. And people, to me, I feel like people hiding your identity from you should be a crime. Like, that should be a crime. I don't care if you adopted me or not. Hiding my biological roots from me should be a crime. This should be everybody knows what's going on type of situation. Even if I don't meet them, even if we never go see them, even if we don't even talk about it again, like my situation. Okay, like, we gonna act like that never happened. Okay, cool, whatever. But not telling someone about their biological roots, to me, should be a crime. You are robbing someone of their identity. You're robbing them of their identity. And for the mere fact that Child Protective Services and the adoption agencies and things of that nature really tell you to, and I don't know what it is like today in 2026, right? Because I've been adopted for a long time now. And so back in the 90s, they told them to act like everything was normal. Time will heal all the wounds, get them involved in sports, make sure that they're active. They're not
cliche lines.
Yes. And that has done more harm than good. But it doesn't mean that we weren't raised in good homes. It doesn't mean that we didn't have good education. It doesn't mean that we weren't loved and clothed and, taking on trips and things of that nature. It means that a part of our identity is skewed because people were lying to us, or people were withheld the truth from us, or people didn't want to acknowledge the truth. People didn't want to be uncomfortable. And for us, it makes us look like the bad people when we actually stumble upon the truth. And that, why am I the bad person? Because someone decided to lie to me, because somebody decided to withhold information from me. How do I now become the bad person when I never chose any of this? And sometimes it's like the adoptive parents want to kind of like hide their tail between their legs, and it's just and no, if you want to choose this, do it with your chest.
It's funny you say that, because that's exactly how I felt when I was going to my adopted mom. I said, I feel so bad. Like, I feel horrible.
Why? When you want to know about you?
No, I'm just saying, like, I can remember like going through those thoughts and emotions. Like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like I'm committing a crime? And I haven't done anything.
It is like, again, you get that feeling in your stomach, like, should I do this or not? Like, the day goes by. All right, let me wait till tomorrow. Like you said, you had to fill out the vibe. It's like, I knowing my biological father now, I don't have to fill out a vibe. I could talk to him about anything. I could go to him about anything. I could spark a conversation about anything, because that's my father. And he's not going to stop any uncomfortable conversations, because at the end of the day, truth is what is going to set us free. So why am I going to make her feel uncomfortable about a certain situation when all we got to do is talk about it? Because talking about it will get us through it, right? And now I feel as though there is nothing that I can't go to him with. My biological father, there's nothing that I can't talk to him about, because he's going to keep it real with me. And then that's probably where I get that from. That's probably why it's in my veins, because meeting my father solidified that. It really was just like, he really liked that. And that's why I'm really like that. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't feel that with my adopted family. There was no sense of, it was like we're going through the motions, but keeping it real and getting down to the real feelings and the truth of things that's not what was going on. It was just like, we're a new made family, almost like an arranged marriage, and we just going to keep rolling with the punches. Whereas when a lot of adoptees, when they meet their biological family, they always say it was an instant connection. I can't even explain it. I can't, because you can't explain what's understood between two people. Like, you can't really explain it. You can only experience it. and continue to experience it. But it's an instant connection because you're biologically connected. Like Chelsea said earlier in the comments, you and your dad had the same pose. You and your dad even had the same profession. Okay. And didn't even know because you were biologically wired from him. And so I always say the blood don't lie. The blood don't lie. Never raised by the man. He never raised you. He never told you to go into this profession. He never presented it to you. But years later, when you are going to meet him, you find out that y'all in the same profession. You have a picture, same pose. We can't, that's nothing that can be orchestrated other than DNA. Right? DNA stitches people together. And when you're outside of that DNA, things seem foreign. Things seem, like you got to make it gel. You have to make it work. It's almost like this. I'm going to put this on the stage and then we're going to get out of here. But I never knew this about Kerry Washington. Love her to death. Never knew this about her, but listen how she explains her story and what it feels like and how she what she equated it to. Hold on.
That my dad is not my biological father, that I was born from a sperm donor. And this was shocking to me and also not, right? Like it was that thing of like, I was shocked because it was not the story I had been told and not the story we had been living, but also it made so much sense to me because there had been this sense of like, I felt like I didn't know myself and I felt a disconnect with my parents and I felt a disconnect with myself. And I never knew what to ascribe that to. I never knew why. And
again, you instantaneously know. No one has to really tell you. It's almost like you're waiting for this truth to be revealed and you're trying to figure out how you're going to get to this truth. But to be born by a sperm donor and it be shocking, but it also makes sense is the duality that we live in.
And suddenly it was like the pieces all fell into place. It was like there had been this beautiful puzzle on the wall of our home that had this one wrong piece in it, but it was close enough that everybody just pretended that the painting was perfect. Everybody was like, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. If you got close enough, you could see that there was a missing puzzle piece. But since we all ignored it, we all kind of forgot about it. And when my parents told me, it was like somebody finally took that wrong puzzle piece that had been like jammed into place and pulled it out. And we got to all be honest about like that piece was wrong. And we don't even know what the missing piece is because I don't know who the donor is, but at least now the painting is honest.
At least now the paint is honest. I actually have a tattoo of a puzzle piece on my foot because that's exactly how I felt back in college when my sister called me. And I'll never forget, I came home from college that I was on a break because I went back to college. So I was on a break and I was like, no, it wasn't my first tattoo because I got 2 small tattoos before that one. But I said, I'm going to get a puzzle piece because that's exactly how I feel. I feel like there is a piece of me missing and I don't know how I'm going to fit it with the pieces that it's actually connected to. But that's exactly how I felt. And I have a puzzle piece on my foot with an eye in it, with tears, with five hearts, and I love hearts. 5 hearts inside of the tears because at that time I thought it was only 5 of us, like me and 4 of the siblings, really 7 of us. I'm like, dang, I'm gonna have to get 2 more tears, but I don't think there's any more room. But that's why I got.
She said that perfectly. Like every piece of that she said, man, all these videos you be finding, they be resonating in different ways. Like she said that in a way, and that's exactly how I felt. I was a piece of the puzzle that was close enough where I could fit right in, which I did. And I could grow into the person that I am today. Um, and be, courageous enough to talk about it, and that's because of you. Like, if I wouldn't have met you, like, I'd probably still be, doing whatever on the internet. But um, watching videos and learning my craft. But it's all for a good cause. It's all for um, people to understand. It's really about education. It's not,
Yeah,
it's about education, and we're just freeing ourselves by talking about it. Every Tuesday, we're just really giving you the real, the raw, unfiltered content that you can't get everywhere else.
right.
And it's really not about other people's stories. It's about you know getting the education from the stories, or getting those tidbits from each video, like that video you just played where she's talking about a piece in the puzzle.
Hmm.
That's definitely the way my life has felt. um Rest in peace to my brother, who passed away. But I never felt a connection to him. Like, we loved each other, but like, i never I never had that sibling connection with my brother. Like, we always fought and argued, and you know, it was always contention between us. Um, and I don't know, if he could have been jealous a little bit, because I was getting all the attention because I was the youngest, and that could have been the case, and he never said it. But um, at times, you can feel when someone, because I thought that, when I look at the way other people, um, you know, have sibling um, relationships, like, I never had that, and I always wanted it, and um, you know, I thought I was getting that with my sister, and then, like, she
Your,
was.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your brother,
Mhm.
right? This is or is not your biological brother,
No, he's not. He's my adopted brother.
right? So your parents adopted both of you, but now your sister that you're talking about is your biological.
No, I was the only one that was adopted.
You know what? I keep forgetting that. So your parents did have two children.
They had one. So my brother. So my adopted parents already had a son.
Okay.
So they adopted me, and then it was just the two of us.
Hmm.
But my birth mother and father is just me and my sister.
Right, your biological sister. Okay.
Yeah. So, um, but
Wow.
is what?
Well, just the dynamic between, again, a biological child with the adoptee, right?
Hmm.
That has to in itself be an experience. Like, I don't necessarily have that experience. Both my brother and I are biological brother and sister, but we were adopted together, and my
Hmm.
parents didn't have any biological children. And so, were there differences between us two and how we were raised? Not really. I felt like we were raised as a unit, even though we were two individual kids. Um, but with you, you were adopted, but there was already a child in the home. And so
Hmm.
now like you said, the attention went from just it being him and the only child and the only boy, to now
Hmm.
there's another boy who's younger, who's not even related to us, and he's living in our house now. So, his experience, while valid, is different, because he's coming from a standpoint of who are my parents opening our home to, you know? So I think all of the stories are just fascinating to listen to. And I'm sorry I can't keep up, child, because I know you already said that before. I know you said that before, but it's just like
It's okay.
like
It's okay.
because it's like, you know, everyone has their own experience with adoption, not just the adoptees, right? Like everyone has their experience. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're fine. No, but I'm just saying that, like from a standpoint of when I see people who have siblings and they are so closely connected, it grinds my gears because I don't have that connection.
mm,
And I think like even when I was growing up, me and my brother, like he would, he would want to go somewhere and like, oh, can I go? They're like, no, you can't go. Then I used to be pissed off all over again. Just for that moment, but I'm not saying like forever. I'm just saying like in that moment, I'm like,
oh, we supposed to be brothers. Why can I go with my brother?
Right. And so, it's all a learning curve, emotional roller coaster, Twilight Zone, the fog, whatever you want to call it. It's all encompassing in one.
Yeah.
What's going on, Derek?
Hola. Yes, it definitely is a fog, Twilight Zone. It's a different world. I think we should create a different world, like the TV show, but just for adoptees, because it is a different world. You're living amongst strangers that you have to now call family, and then you do become family. But then as you get older, you discover your biological family, and it is just a whirlwind, almost like a tornado of events, right? Because up until last year, it's 7 of us, and we literally just found our youngest brother, in which there are 20 years in between me and him. I'm the oldest and he's the youngest, right? So even navigating, the relationships between my siblings has been a journey, because once my sister, got in contact with me, it was just a whirlwind of, okay, now we got to meet our other siblings. And on the sibling that didn't get adopted, we went to her house literally deep, bro, knocking on the door, and she opened the door like, who are y'all? So we were that sibling group, like, no, we gonna all know each other, we're gonna all love each other, and I'm sorry that you didn't have that experience, but again, that just goes to show you how everybody's experience is not the same. And there are aspects of your story that I wish that I had, and there are aspects of my story that you wish that you had. But I'm glad that we're able to speak on these things so that people can just see the different dynamics and the different family units that made us who we are now, along with what we're currently going through in our biological journey, our biological family journey of finding family. In my case, after finding our youngest brother, and my dad, to me, I feel like my world is kind of complete now. And where, the young lady was saying how she's in a phase of her life where she's able to make sense of both of her worlds. And I believe that's where I am now. I felt like I couldn't do that before I found my biological father. I felt like I couldn't do that until I found, the last child that my biological mother gave birth to. But now that I've been able to do that, I'm able to, stop that, giving the energy to the search, and give the energy to the relationship, and be able to be present with these family members and make memories with them. Again, being the oldest of 7 is not easy. Everybody, like the youngest, he's about to be graduating from high school, and it's like I'm like, y'all, we got to be there for our brother. We need to throw him a party, a graduation/trunk party. He's going to college. I let him know how monumental that is, because there's a lot of adoptees who do not get that secondary education. They don't go on to get their degree. And myself, my brother, and now him, are going to be able to say that we were able to beat the odds and not be a statistic in the way of not having that secondary education and getting a degree. So, we're all going through different seasons, but we're all able to be there for each other. And so I'm able to now be able to rest peacefully and being able to make sense of my world of being adopted, because now I can just know my siblings, my father, and again, spend that energy and getting to know them even more and having more life, more memories, more good times with them. So that's, what I'm looking forward to. But the adoption journey is still a journey, because I am still a part of course, my adopted family as well. And so, just being able to navigate that is still always a daily journey for me.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you. Like I'm
Thank you.
genuinely excited for you because this is obviously is definitely something that you've been longing for and searching for. And as adoptees, that's the only thing that we ask is an attempt to, you know, have some kind of connection or at least a meeting, like if you don't ever, you know, you don't want it to go that way, but like if the connection doesn't transpire or if you can't blossom it, it's okay, because at least you tried, right? And that's all you can give is the effort.
Yep.
And if you don't give the effort, you'll never know. And I say that for people out there who, you know, if you are adopted and you are wanting to know, go for it. Like, it will. I'm gonna tell you, it'll free you in so many ways you don't even realize. Like, for real. Um, when I met when I met my birth parents, it was like it was like two boulders like lifted off my shoulder. For real.
Just meeting,
Um, yes, yes,
putting your
just
eyes on them.
yes. Now, unfortunately, that relationship didn't really blossom, and my birth parents have since passed away. And so, you know, going back to Mother's Day,
Yeah.
Mother's Day is going to be a rough one. Um, but I'm still hopeful, for what, you know, I can possibly conjure up and hopefully, I can meet some of my extended family. I would really love to. Um, but if it doesn't, if God doesn't see it that way, then, maybe it's for the good thing, maybe it's for the protection, like you said earlier. Um, and, you know, I'm at a place in my life, I'm giving it one more try. And if this doesn't work, um, I'm just going to bury that hatchet if it doesn't work out, or if I can't um, make anything blossom out of that, and I'm going to be there for you to support you on your journey, you know.
And sometimes what I had to learn, and this is just me, and I'm just talking about my experience. So if anybody wants to grab some tidbits, we are more than welcome. But what I had to experience and what I had to come to realize is that we didn't choose any of this. We didn't orchestrate any of this. We didn't have any control over it. And so I had to remember, literally remember to allow God to be God, because he started it and he's going to finish it. Right. And so the days where I would get frustrated or tired from searching and scrolling and looking up so many names and trying to connect this person with this person and trying to do it in my own strength. Like I said, I got weary looking for my father, and there was times where I just gave up. And then there were times where I would wake up to, I got a message from my brother, and it was just like, whoa, like after how long? And now it's like a year later, and I'm getting a message like, yeah, like I'll meet up with you, and I'll be in Florida. I'll be in Florida. And then even that was like a rush, like because I had put it down for so long that I wasn't searching anymore. And sometimes God will give you things when you just least expect it, or he'll reveal things to you in his timing. And we could be so eager and we could be so ready to be, ready to walk through that door, ready to meet these people, ready to get that phone call, ready to get that email. And it just doesn't come when we want it to. But every time my life unfolded, honestly, it wasn't when I wanted it to. It was when he wanted it to. When my sister found me, it was when he wanted it to. When I woke up one day after changing my name on Facebook, it didn't happen the next day. A couple weeks later, I got a message in my inbox. That was when he wanted it to happen. When I found my father, it wasn't when I wanted it to happen. It's when he wanted it to happen. So I have to really come, and it's not just with my adoption story, but just in my life in general, that things are just going to happen for me when God wants it to happen. All I can do is really do what he wants me to do, and that's to love my neighbor, and that's to spread the good word.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else is out of my control, no matter how much I'm thinking I'm controlling it or not. So that's what I would tell adoptees, to not get so caught up in it happening the way that you want it to happen, because it didn't happen the way you want it to happen in the first place.
Amen, sister.
Like, if I had it my way, it wouldn't have happened the way that it happened. And so I have to just remember that. I have to remember that it didn't happen the way that I wanted to happen in the first place. What makes me think that any part of this process is going to happen the way that I want it to happen? Even, the closeness or the connection I wish that my parents had to my biological story, it's not going to happen the way that I want it to happen. I want them to be like, all right, come on, let's sit down, let's have this conversation. I'm going to acknowledge this, you're going to acknowledge this, and we're going to be able to move forward. But that's the way I want it to happen. It's not going to happen like that. And so, we have to, as a collective, as adoptees, get rid of, well, I control the story now, because we don't. We may have access to the information. We might know which door to knock on, but we don't know the day where God is going to save someone's heart and say, you know what? I'm going to put it on your heart today to move in this type of way. And I'm not even going to warn Leon. I'm not even going, he going to think that it's over, it's done with. But today is going to be the day. And it's only when that day comes when we realize that we not bigger than God. Only he can make the things happen. I done already gave you guys a few instances where how does this happen? How are both of my brothers at the same place at the same time?
The closest instance I had was when my grandmother lived 2 miles away from where I grew up. I was like totally thrown aback by that. Like, I was passing her house every day to go to school, like literally to go to high school.
The things we don't know that are right underneath of our noses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of adoptees are like that. They grow up in the same state, probably maybe 20, maybe to 45 minutes away from their biological family. Wouldn't even know because it's kept a secret. And in some ways it's a good thing, and in some ways it's not such a good thing, because in the end we're gonna go searching, we're gonna go looking, or we're at least gonna have the thought. And so that thought can very much turn into a seed that is planted, and a whole flower can bloom from that thing. And so, with that being said, we encourage adoptive parents to just listen in on the adoptee conversation, listen in and really examine, your heart in ways of trying to connect with your adoptee on a level that you've never connected with them before, and watch it open up the relationship with your children or your child. And watch it, transform your relationship when you're offering your presence, and being there for them in a way that you've never been there for them before. But
Presence is power.
presence is power. Presence is power, and presence doesn't have to cost you anything. Presence is free. Make the time and be there. That's it. That's all. You know. But it's been a good show. I'm glad that we were able to go over the second half of Adoptees Navigating Through the Fog. I hope that more people are understanding of what the fog is. Maybe they see themselves in the fog and they have gotten, some gems that they can kind of put in their pocket and remember and meditate on, or just listen to this over. Maybe share it with someone who you see that is going through the fog, and you see that they're having a hard time and they really don't have anyone to talk to, and you don't know how to relate and you don't know how to empathize with them, but you do sympathize with them in a way that you do want them to get the help that they need. Definitely share the video, subscribe to the Real Precious on YouTube. I'm Real Precious Official on Instagram, but also subscribe to 3 Adoptee Voices. He does share these lives over on his channel as well. And we just gonna keep, having the space for the conversation. Like I said, next live, I do want to share with you guys the organization that helps adoptees actually be advocates and mentors to those. It's not, we're not adopting kids, we're not, taking them in our home, but we are going to be a advocate for them, a actual in the flesh advocate for them. And so that is something that I will be indulging in pretty soon. And so I'm going to be sharing that with you guys. But again, thank you guys so much, Chelsea, Derek, everyone that has showed up. Ferg, I saw a few names in the channel. I see a Mira, Coach Ferg in the chat. A lot of y'all showed up today, and I appreciate it, even if you didn't stay the whole time. Team Murphy, Teresa, I saw her in the chat. A lot of people supporting. I appreciate you guys' continued support throughout the weeks of just hanging with us and being a part of the conversation. We need y'all. Y'all need us. And so we're going to be here. We're going to be here. All right. You have any last thoughts that you want to share with the folks before we get up out of here?
Just thanks everybody for showing up. We appreciate the support. We couldn't do it, without you guys, being active in the chat, asking questions, and really being, trying to learn about, our stories and how we navigate, this world. And, I do want to say I have 2 degrees myself.
Mm-hmm.
I have associates in networking, and I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity.
Okay. Beating the odds. Okay. We part of some of them statistics, but we're not going to be part of by some. Look, by default, we fall into, some of them statistics, but we also can take hold of our story and beat a lot of those statistics too, because again, a lot of adoptees do not make it to that secondary education. They don't have the love and support from a family who will, show them a path, a different path that they can take in life to set them up in life, or at least just give them the education, and so I'm glad that we're not part of those statistics, and definitely pray for those who are, because I'm sure it is difficult. College is a pivotal point in our lives, and where we learn ourselves a little bit more too. So you already don't know yourself, and then you don't get to experience an experience where you should be getting to know yourself. You just have this delayed development.
Mhm.
You know, I'm glad that that just wasn't our story. But guys, thank you. Join us again. Those who, are experiencing the loss of a mother, or have lost their mother either through adoption, even if it's a biological mother, even if it's, a stepmother or someone who was a mother figure, my thoughts and prayers will be with you on Mother's Day. Find a healthy way to, express your grief. Maybe go to the park, maybe go to a river, maybe go somewhere where, it is, you have your quiet time, but you're able to have a stream of thought that is not interrupted by others, or maybe you don't want to be and you do want to be surrounded by others. Be surrounded by those who can love up on you and show you love and be there for you. That presence, right? We talked about the presence, and if that is something that you're seeking, definitely put yourself in the center of those environments so you don't have to experience the day of being alone, because grief is being able to explore those feelings of loss. And sometimes people who lose don't want to be alone because that's the very reason why they're feeling that way in the first place. So
Mhm.
definitely don't be too hard on yourself on that day. But whatever you do, do in remembrance of your mother and what way feels comfortable for you. And those who are adopted and have biological mothers, you're going to be doing this with both, right? You're going to be able to, I believe, honor both. And you should, because both are important and they both had an impact on your life, whether one was there longer than the other one or, vice versa. So, definitely have a great Mother's Day. Love on your mothers, honor your mothers, in remembrance of your mothers. Find a special time in that day to honor them. Well,
I agree.
we will be back next week, Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. But until then, be real with yourself so you can be real with others. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.